You have a team, or you're working with a VA or a freelancer, but somehow you're still the one finishing up a drawing at midnight. You're still the one everybody comes to for every single decision. You're the one checking, fixing, following up on everyone and everything. And having people around you was supposed to make everything easier. So why does it feel like you're falling behind, just like when you were by yourself? And the answer isn't that delegation doesn't work for you, it's just that nobody showed you how to set it up properly. So in today's video, I want to walk you through a step-by-step framework that I call the solo to team blueprint that is going to show you how to set up delegation so it finally works for your business and you stop being the bottleneck in everything. So why does delegation fails without a process? Imagine that you finally hand something off. You've hired a freelancer and you get a floor plan ready, maybe it's a sourcing task or a presentation, but it comes back to you and it's not at all what you were expecting. And then you kind of feel like you're actually spending more time between the briefing and telling them what went wrong than if you actually had done it yourself. So next time what ends up happening is that you decide to do it yourself. And slowly you start feeling like delegation is just not going to work for you. And that's not a problem that is related to the person that you hired in itself. It's just what happens when a task goes out without a clear brief, without shared expectation, and without a defined way of working together. Because most of the time I see that designers keep a lot of the information in their heads, so then it's very difficult for them to delegate properly. And the solo to team blueprint is about getting it out and building a structure that your whole team can follow without you holding every piece together. Okay, so how do you do that? Step number one, we're gonna build the foundation. We get the process out of your head. Before you delegate a single task, the person joining your team needs to understand how you work. And right now, I'm sure that it's all common knowledge to you, but it still lives in your head. Whether it's your standards, your expectations, the type of clients that you work with, what's important to you, what you like to deliver to the clients and the contractor. So we need to build a basic framework, a basic process that other people who come into your team can easily follow. And I've talked about SOPs in a lot of videos. SOPs are not just for big businesses, they're also for small businesses and even solopreneurs. Even for you, if you write down a clear process, a clear step-by-step on how to do specific things, it's going to be much easier for you to follow them and not reinvent the wheel on every project. So SOPs can be done for anything. For example, you can write one about what the mission of your business is, what your vision is for the business, what kind of projects you take on, the type of people you like to work with, anything that's important in terms of what the business is about. You could write one based on your services, on your signature process. And you can also write SOPs for the type of positions that you hire for. So let's say you have a VA, you can write what's important for them to know about this position as VA, what their responsibilities are, where they can make decisions or ask you beforehand because you want to make that decision yourself. So where do they have the power of making decisions and where should they come back to you first? Those are some of the things that are really important to set before you bring anyone else on your team. But it's not just about SOPs, it's also about the way you're going to organize your projects. So, when you have photos from site on your phone, and then you have project management on Asana, and you have drawings on Google Drive, and then you have client communication on Slack or in a client portal. Everything lives in different places. And for anyone joining your team, it's going to be difficult because they don't know what's in your head, they don't know what's on your phone. So if you can have also a standard folder that you're going to use for all your projects, where you have all the sites, photos, all the notes from the meeting, etc., where people know where they can find anything that they will need in the future, is going to be really helpful. And because they have all the information from the SOPs, they have all the information from the project folder, they will check those first before coming to you. So if they come to to you, it's a last resort because they haven't found what they were looking for. And your project management system, the same thing. It needs to be organized. It needs to have the project number, the project name, the project phases, key dates. You can also add who is responsible for what. So you can have different tasks and say that you're responsible for X, Y, Z, and then the other person is responsible for A, B, C. And once you start being more organized as well, it means that your timelines are going to make sense. You're going to know exactly when to share a brief to your team or your freelancer for it to come back to you before the presentation day. So it's a process that is needed before you can delegate, because if you're finding it a mess in your head already by yourself, it's going to be impossible for you to transfer that information to someone else and expect them to excel in whatever task you're asking them to do. I have a couple of videos where I explain how you can write SOPs. So if you want to watch that next, I will link it down below. Step number 2, you're going to decide what to delegate and who to delegate to. So for this, what you need to do is to be clear on what only you can do, what are clients paying you for, what is your zone of genius that should stay with you, and what can be delegated that is time consuming, not interesting, it's very low value tasks for the business. All of this is either going to be delegated, eliminated, or automated. And I always recommend designers for their first hire not to be someone they need to train. And I know that you immediately want to go to a junior designer or an intern because they're more cost effective. But what ends up happening with absolutely every designer I work with, they come to me because they've tried hiring an intern or a junior designer, and they spend so much time training them that first it took them way longer to do, and second of all, they didn't free up their time because they had to train that person. So instead of elevating their projects and really removing themselves from doing those tasks, they ended up doing it with someone else that they need to pay to teach them how to do it. And it took them longer than if they hired someone with more expertise that will do the work faster, better, that will have skills that you don't necessarily have, and that will take your projects, but most importantly, your business to the next level. So your first hires, you need to free up time. I definitely do not recommend going for an intern or a junior. If later down the line, you have already a few people who can work alone, they don't need you to train them, and you want someone that you can bring that will learn everything and your way of working, they haven't never worked for another company before, then hire a junior or an intern if you find that cool. But I definitely don't recommend that you do that as a first hire. And beyond skills, there are a few qualities that I look for when I hire a new designer to join my team, and those are reliability. Can you trust that they will deliver on time without chasing them? The second one is personality, obviously, because it's someone you're going to see a lot of. So can you actually see yourself working with that person quite a lot? Then professionalism, of course, because you want to know if you could leave them with a client or whether you wouldn't trust them to stay with your clients, then it's probably a red flag. Then we want to look at communication. Do they share updates regularly without you chasing them? Then organization. Do tasks come back in a way that's organized, or do you struggle to find anything because they just file it anywhere? That's probably a red flag as well. I would also say the hunger of growing with a small business, because as solopreneurs, we want people who are passionate and who really want to build this business with you. They need to understand that it's going to look completely different if they join a team of 50 where everything is defined, they get their paycheck at the end, with just doing their 9 to 5. Sometimes there's going to be a little bit more flexibility that's needed with a small business. So do they fit that profile? And remember that I always say in my YouTube videos that there's a difference between a task doer and a strategic partner. A task doer is just going to execute whatever you tell them to do. A strategic partner understands the outcome and uses their judgment and their skills to get there. And because most designers always only delegate tasks, to-dos on their list, every decision always comes back to them, because designers, your teams, are not trained to be decision makers. So they always come back to you for every single decision, and it's just gonna be impossible for you to keep up. So define the decision lane before the first task goes out to them. What can they handle independently? What needs a quick check-in? What always comes to you first? You want to empower your people to make decisions, make them feel like they have a real say on the projects and the business, that they are growing with you. People who feel like they're just doing whatever you're telling them to do and they're not seeing clients, they can't make a single decision by themselves, they're not going to be motivated in the long run. And then they're going to find a better offer where they feel like they are valued. And if you're not sure what you should keep doing yourself and what you should delegate, I have a checklist that you can download. I will add it to the description below. And it's going to help you figure out what your zone of genius is, what you can eliminate, what you can automate, and what you can delegate. And then how to track the progress and the results that you get when you try to actually delegate. So I will add the link down in the description. Step number 3, we want to write a brief that actually works. A brief is what determines the quality of what comes back. A brief is strongly related to what comes back to you. A weak brief most likely will bring weak results. So make sure that you include everything so that there's no key information left behind. So what to include, for example, what the deliverable looks like when it's done, the context and the background they need, the constraints, software, if you have a preference, the style, the format. You can already send an example of something you've done in the past that matches your expectations for that type of drawing, what you've tried, what you don't like, the deadline, of course, and how questions should be asked. Do they need to send you a message? Do they need to fill out a form? And you have to describe the finished thing and not just the task. So for example, a colored floor plan on A3 in our standard template, ready for the client presentation on Thursday. This is a brief. Can you do the floor plan for this? Is not a brief. It lacks key information about what you need and how you need it delivered. And if it comes back with mistakes, before assuming that it's a quality issue, always think to yourself, was the brief clear enough? The thing that's missing, could they have figured it out? Or did I forget to include important information and that's why the work came back the way it did? And you know what I've done for my one-on-one clients? When they start working with me, I actually provide them with the AI tool that they can use to price for the project, build strong scopes, but also get briefs out of the project very quickly that they can share with the team. So they don't have to spend 1 hour writing up a brief. AI does it for them based on the tasks that they're gonna be doing themselves and what they want to delegate. So if you're interested to see what it looks like to work with me one-on-one, I will add the link down in the description. Step number 4, I want you to add a post-meeting buffer after each one of your meetings, whether they are in person or it's calls on the phone or on the laptop. Every site visit or client call generates tasks that need to happen after that meeting. But most of the time, they're not going to be delegated properly, and I see it often. We actually spoke about it at the masterminds that I ran in March, where designers felt really behind because they go from one meeting to the next thing, and before they know it, it's been 3 days, they still haven't sent the brief to the technical team, so things have not moved forward, and now they're a little bit late on that project. So the post-meeting buffer allows you to process, file, or delegate in any information that needs to be. So you're gonna file the site photos into the right folder for them to be, for you to be able to access them whenever you're going to need them, and for your team to be able to know where they're going to be, not on your phone. And you're also going to process any summary and action items. In another video, I told you how you can quickly create summaries and action steps using a transcript. So the important thing is to record the call, but there's a video about this. I will link it. You can watch it next. But the idea is that in that buffer, which can be between 30 minutes to 1 hour, it's the buffer right after the meeting. So the meeting doesn't end the moment that you leave that room with whether it's the contractor or the client. It ends once you have done that post-meeting processing of everything that needs to happen following that meeting. So after every meeting, you're going to have 30 minutes to 1 hour when you get back into the office, where you're going to deal with what happened on site that day. Step number 5, I want you to review without taking back control. So you delegated a task, you got it back, and you have feedback. I do not want you to take this and redo it yourself. I want you to review it, and you're going to share feedback in a way that teaches teaches them what went wrong and how they can avoid making the same mistake again next time. And you have to be really specific, because saying this isn't right is not going to help them avoid that mistake again. You need to be clear about what needs to change, why, and how to do it differently next time. The standard you hold and the feedback you give to your team is what raises the quality of the work over time. A little tip that you can try next time is to paste the original brief that you shared with your team, what came back to you, so you can even send a voice note as well if it's a drawing. So you're going to paste it into AI and you're going to ask it to identify the gaps between the brief and what came back to you and what was missing. Because it's not just about the team, it's also about you who worked by yourself up until now, and now you've become a manager. We all need to improve on this. It's a skill that you need to develop. So understanding where the gaps were so that you avoid mistakes on either side is going to make such a difference in the future. Step number 6, I want you to set in your calendar at least 60 minutes of CEO time every single week. 90 minutes would be better, 2 hours is great. But if you only have 1 hour, start with that and then you can build up with time. The CEO time is not to review projects, it's to work on the business. So this is going to change every week, but one thing that you should absolutely do, especially if you started working with people, is to identify what you delegated on that specific week, what came back to you and at what quality, and what your freed up hours of not having to do that task actually went to. Because the whole point of delegation is to free up time for higher level revenue tasks, maybe focusing on finding bigger projects or better clients, growing the business. So if you delegated 5 hours, but those 5 hours disappeared into sourcing for a lamp for 5 hours, this is not a high level revenue task. So spending time identifying what delegation is doing for your business, what it is allowing you to do, how much better the quality of the project has become, this is very important. And if you don't spend the time to look at this, you're going to really miss out on key signals. Also use the time to assess how your team members are growing in their respective roles. Are they thinking more on their own? Are they more independent? Is the back and forth reduced? These are signs that delegation is finally starting to work, because it does take time. Even if they're highly skilled people, they still need to understand who you are and what your expectations are. So expect to have a little bit of a transition period for them to understand your process and for you to understand how delegation can really work for you. And of course, as everything else that you do, it's going to improve over time. So the solo to team blueprint is a step-by-step of how to get started, but you're always going to refine that process for your business, because the more people you have and also the more time you've been at it, you're going to be better at briefing, you're going to be better at understanding where you need your team members to be to save you time. You're going to understand how to use your time better as well. So like everything in business, it's something that's going to improve over time. So be patient. And if you want all this in writing, you can click the link in the description below. I created a little bit of a checklist called the Solo to Team Blueprint that you can download for free. I hope it's helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next video.